How many of you went through school? All of you. Awesome. Now, how many of you actually paid attention in classes? Now, I want you to think about those classes you actually loved and paid attention in. What was it that drew you to them? I feel like chances are your lecturers or your tutors were very humorous and they were pretty good at storytelling. I'm a student of the University of Benin pursuing a degree in statistics, and I can categorically tell you that my favorite lecturers and the favorite classes I've ever had are with the tutors who can tell a story. The tutors who are able to take me out of the lecture theater with a story, the ones who often segue from the numbers and the statistics and focus on using a story as a vehicle to drive home why Poisson distribution is important to everyday life. By a show of hands, how many of you have heard of TikTok? Well, if you haven't heard of TikTok, your Generation Z relative has failed in their duty. You see, at the height of the pandemic in 2020, I was one of a number of students in my country who had to stay home for months. Now, unlike my peers abroad, my university did not have a set structure to allow us to learn from home. And so most of us had little to no resources in accessing our lecturers or learning whatever we needed to learn whilst we were at home. The one thing the majority of us had though was smartphones and occasional internet access. During a period where TikTok garnered some 600 million plus downloads, that means that a large percentage of every young person on the planet were on apps like TikTok and YouTube. Most of us joined those applications as creators, and a larger number of us joined as audiences. With such an abundance of time away from school, I began learning stuff on YouTube and TikTok. I began trying to keep up with courses that we may take when we resume schools, and I learned new soft skills. I quickly realized that in a generation, my generation, with a constantly shortening attention span, I could sit through a 5-minute TikTok video or a 45-minute YouTube video. A rarity in my everyday physical classes. Now more than ever, I could understand and remember the content that I have watched or the skill that I acquired from a video without having to go back to that video or a book every single time. Through a survey conducted with a pool of students from my school and friends in schools abroad, I've learned that most creators are credited for about 60% of sources where students learn the most. Hence, creators are mostly regarded as educators. Which brings me to the single most important point or takeaway from my entire speech, and that is, for education to be a catalyst for the future, institutions need to learn and reimagine how we teach and how we educate. Knowing this, with influencers and creators becoming educators, and a shifted focus on psychological comfort for students in a generation that prioritizes mental health and comfort in learning more than most, it's a wonder what creators are doing right and how existing technologies and innovations are helping them make these learning processes more streamlined. Storytelling marks why a tale as old as time can continuously be retold with very little chance of it ever becoming mundane. From the recent surge in movie remakes and the content redundancy on YouTube, the one consistency amongst both creative media is that young people watch while paying attention to only the best of stories. In a landscape filled with options on who to watch what from, the most successful creators and educators are storytellers. Now more than ever, what we define as education and teaching methods needs to change. It needs to adapt to the psychologies of growing learners. An example of this would be Nigeria's TikTok creator Charity Ekezie, who has taken the TikTok social media platform by storm since the pandemic by interchangeably mixing humor, wit, and sometimes sarcasm to answer stereotypical questions using her personal experiences. One of those questions would be, do Africans live in huts, and do we have lions as pets? Yes and no. We do live in huts, some of us do, but we do not have lions as pets. In fact, we run from them. Charity makes short videos that answer questions about Africa, drawing from her personal experiences to answer simple questions like how many people have a smartphone in Africa and do we actually use smartphones, to much mundane ones like how do we get water to drink, and of course, do we have lions as pets? Having amassed an average of 1 million views per video and over 1 million followers on TikTok, Charity has successfully created a community and audience through storytelling and humor, which works. On the other end of social media, you have YouTube creator and former Vox Media investigative journalist Johnny Harris, a master storyteller and educator, breaking down convoluted and often complicated topics through storytelling, research, and proliferated curiosity. Johnny is one of select creators on the internet who have successfully hacked the art of retaining user attention through often lengthy and documentary style videos. Johnny is the history teacher I never had. And for many around the world, he is a trusted educator and a source of information that does his best work by explaining and using visual aid and storytelling. Amassing over 3 million subscribers on YouTube, or more suitably, a community of 3 million learners, Johnny Harris is what a modern educator could look like. Now, at the beginning of this conversation, I asked you, what were your favorite courses or classes in university and what drew you to them? What the tutors of those classes and these creators have in common is their understanding of the audience. Knowing whom you're teaching is as important as, if not more so, than the subject or topic that is being taught. For creators, understanding our audience is even harder because we seldom know who we are creating for. We have to spend a lot of time researching and trying to understand who we are creating for so we can tailor our content to match their lived experiences, personal or otherwise. For conventional teachers, understanding your students and their shared experiences could be what makes your students invested in your class or disinterested. I have attempted teaching a number of times and oh, can I tell you, my peers were brutal. With my generation, there is only so much that we're willing to hear and remember. And so if your class isn't exactly memorable, your job as a teacher to impart knowledge is undone. So far, I've talked about some of the most recurring challenges that are affecting students and teachers alike. And this is from the perspective of a student teacher like myself. But in those challenges offer a unique opportunity for us to make education and learning that much more better. We can take inspiration from known and emerging student creators on social media, seeing how we've made peer-to-peer learning super accessible, to understanding how we can retain student attention within classes and outside of it. For parents and teachers, encourage self-discovery amongst your students and children. Understand that with social media and all of its flaws, it is still one of the best places to get educational content and to learn for both students and teachers alike. Now, by a show of hands, how many of you have heard of TikTok? See, my work here is done.
The state of any nation in the world, or the state of the world, is a reflection of what the current state of knowledge is. It therefore means education is the foundation of any modern society. Education is important in that it is the provider of food and the means to produce food, provider of technology and the means to provide technology, provider of health and the means to provide the health. Education is the basis of any modern societal function. It therefore means the state of any country is a reflection of its education. No country can develop faster than the development of its education system. So basically, education is the basis of life of humans as we know it. It is the basis of the life of Homo sapiens as we know them. Basically, therefore, it is important to take education seriously, particularly education that is related to science, technology, and innovation, because it is the basis upon which we produce the machines, we produce the attitudes, and we produce all means that makes the basis of life possible. Zimbabwe should be an upper middle income economy, because in the meantime, we're a lower middle income economy. We want to be an upper middle income economy. So that is our strategic intent. So with our strategic intent, we believe that if we configure our education, which we have done properly, into Education 5.0, we will be able to have necessary capabilities for the nation. Capability 1, capability 2, capability 3, capability 4, capability 5. With these capabilities, we are able to achieve our goal. But in order to have that capability, our education has to be configured properly underneath. So the configuration of our education is the Education 5.0, which is going to give us The capabilities. Yeah, Zimbabwe is a former colony of the United Kingdom. And during the time of the colonial education, it was teaching people how to go and work for someone, how to go and work for a colonial government. But after independence, the education is now to be used. The design is to be such that the education is to be used to produce goods and services. So we did an analysis in Zimbabwe, and we called it, the colonial education, we called it Education 3.0. It was just making people teach, do research, do workshops. So these are 3 pillars. So we called it Education 3.0 in our analysis. Because Zimbabwe is one of the most literate, it's actually the country with the highest literacy on the African continent. And in the world is one of the most literate countries. But what we discovered is that while we boosted our literacy, which is over 94%, our level of industrialization was either constant or going down, which means there was something which was lacking in that education system. It was innovation, it was industrialization. It was also the use of the resources that are in the country, using science on the resources that we have, using technology on the resources that we have, for the purposes of modernization and industrialization. But our education was stopping at 3. So we had to reconfigure our education in about 2018 to what we call heritage-based education 5.0. Why 5.0? Because it has got 5 pillars: teaching, research, community service, innovation, industrialization. And it's heritage-based. Why heritage-based? We always say a real good person uses the resources that they have before they look to the North Pole, South Pole for solutions. Trees that they have, minerals that they have, the water that they have, the people that they have. So in terms of heritage-based education, it means it is education which is using the best science, the best technology, the best innovation on the resources that are present around before you can think about resources that are elsewhere. For Zimbabwe, for example, we have almost every mineral that you can think about in the world. We actually don't know which mineral we don't have. That's how the subsoil economy is. But our education was removed from those resources. It was talking about something else. So we had to turn it back to the heritage to say we have to develop an education that is used to develop resources that we have, that are present, not that are imagined. No imagination. So this society, which was the bubblegum society, which I'm calling the bubblegum society, doing things that are not relevant immediately, and all of a sudden there is poverty and you can't explain it. It's being explained by the fact that you are not focusing on things that matter. So the education that we are talking about and the transformation that we are talking about is the transformation of education so that it begins to talk to what you have. It uses the best science, the best technology, the best knowledge, the best innovation for modernization and industrialization. And once our youth begin to appreciate this, and once governments begin to know that education is not about reading and writing, they are very important. Reading and writing is very important. But reading what and writing what? To achieve what is more important, because writing and reading is a means to an end. Because education is about knowledge, it's about skills, it's about deployment of the knowledge and skills for the purposes of industrialization and modernization. So this basically is the way I think governments should do, the youth should be looking at these things in order to be able to enjoy life. You can't enjoy life as a zombie. You enjoy life as a participant into the production, into the innovation, into the industrialization of any nation. It is life. When life is lived in service, it is life fulfilled. For example, right now, we are working with Rosatom. What we are working on in Rosatom is human resources development in terms of the peaceful use of nuclear science and energy. That's capability that we are looking for. We are working with Roscosmos in terms of our capabilities in space and space science. We are working with the universities across the Russian Federation to have capabilities in different areas, textiles, technology, in terms of agriculture, in terms of subsoil economy and mining. These are the capabilities that we need to acquire in order for us to meet our strategic intent of becoming an upper middle income economy. So I repeat, our goal is to become an upper middle income economy or better. Our method is honing our capabilities. In order for us to hone our capabilities, we need to configure our education, which we have done in terms of the transformation, which has led us to move from Education 3.0, teaching, research, and community engagement, to teaching, research, community engagement, innovation, industrialization, which is heritage-based education 5.0. We believe that this is the means to an end, and that end is a dignified society that is at peace with itself, that has got enough income to be able to sustain a life and relate properly with the rest of the world. In the consumer society, one of the most, which I believe that a misdirected notion is to separate people, young and old. But yet the young are born by the old, and the young need the old in order to form a society. So I have this view that real life is like rocket. A rocket has a strong structure, whom I call the old people. Inside the rocket is rocket fuel and the engine, which is very explosive. But when that fuel is controlled in terms of its explosion, it will direct the rocket to space. So the rocket needs energy, but it needs stability. So the young people need the old people, and the old people need the young people. So society is complete with young and old people. So what I want to say to the young people is that old people are not their enemies. And what I say to the old people is that young people are not their enemies. They are not their nuisance. Young people are their energy. And to the young people, I said, the old people are their stability. So together, the old and the young people make a strong and predictable and prosperous society. But the consumer society has been trying to make rebels out of the young people, thereby disrupting the way society functions. But at the same time, it is important for the older people to realize that this has been has been going on, and we need each other. So there is no war between young and old. There should be cooperation between young and old, so that we can prosper the society. After all, everybody was young before, and everybody is getting old. Even a baby who has been born today is getting old. Every day, they are getting old. So it should never be a topic of friction. It should rather be a topic of cooperation, because together we can make a better world. I would actually want to say myself, science and technology, mathematics, engineering, technology, science is very important for the functioning of any society. We can do our culture, we can do our around knowledge of these, because they help us to produce goods and services. We are not saying that everybody should be a scientist, but the future belongs to science and those who believe in science. You might not be a scientist, but at least you must believe that science is providing the solutions that we are having today. So I say, the future belongs to science and those ones who believe in science. It is very important as a characteristic of a society. You might not be scientifically gifted, but at least you must support scientists. But at the same time, once you do anything which is not science, it's also important, but you must know that the world is made up of knowledge and skills. When your mind is connected to your hands, things can happen. If your mind is disconnected to your hands, things don't happen. If your hands are not connected to what you think, then you are not able to handle life. So it's about the thinking that is connected to the action. So it is very important that whatever young people do, it's important to connect the mind to the hands, and connect what the hands do must be instructed by the mind. They cannot do actions that are not well thought. But at the same time, thinking without doing is not useful. So it's the combination of both in order to make a society a better society, a livable society. One of the most important issues is the delivery method in education. What do I mean? The example was in the year 2020 when COVID came, and we were used to our whiteboards and our pens, writing on the board and everything. All of a sudden, there was COVID, and everybody was going to stay at home. That was the biggest challenge to education. And the most important innovation was the introduction of online learning. We had to do it. And from that point onwards, education can never be the same again. It's now in hybrid format. However, it also had a problem in terms of the practical subjects, where you had to be in the lab and so forth. Of course, not everything can be done virtually. Sometimes you have to mix the chemicals. So this is one of the challenges. But one of the most important things is digital revolution and the introduction of 5G, which has also made it even faster. So I believe this is one of the top most important innovations. Another one is basically the re-ask about what kind of education are we giving. There was disillusionment in terms of whether we were just accumulating books and accumulating certificates. Because somebody says, education is not a heap of certificates that you show to your friends. Education is what you can do. So education suffered a lot also in terms of the way it was done and its objectives. But the revolution that was made is the repurposing of education, especially within design thinking philosophy, that education has to have a purpose, it has to have a benefit. So repurposing of education from what we can call, I can call it, now it's a blue ocean strategy, whereby it's completely new that we are purposing education for industrialization and modernization. It used not to be the case. So there are a lot of things that happened. I'm not sure about the third one. What I can tell you is that the digital revolution is the one that really has driven the way education has gone. But also the reawakening of people, especially in former colonies like ourselves, whereby all of a sudden we discovered that our education, which was education 3.0, was not working for us. We have seen countries develop like the Russian Federation based on their education, Republic of China, everybody developing based on their education because it was of the right configuration. There's a tight link between industry and what happens in the institutions of higher learning. And this realization that there is that link between institutions of higher learning and industry and society is quite a revolution for me in the past decade. So, as we move forward, we believe that education is now beginning to be given in a different way, but its focus is also is different. And I believe that this is now the era where a transformed education is going to drive the world agenda in terms of what we can do. One of the most important issues was the teacher was used to stand in class with students around and drilling down. But now, because knowledge is ubiquitous, it's all over the Internet of Things, IoT, you discover that your notes are no longer the only source of information for the student. So the student has much more access to a wider range of information. So the teacher has now become more of a referee than a feeder who feeds knowledge. You can no longer feed knowledge. Knowledge is now ubiquitous. It's now about the umpire. You are like an umpire facilitating learning. And a non-digital teacher becomes completely useless. If you are non-digital, it means you have fired yourself. Because in the era where you have to teach online, there's no other way you can teach. So this is the way things have changed. But also, we have entered an era whereby it's not what the faculty wants to teach. It is what the students want to know. So there used to be a syllabus which is tick, top down, but now students are demanding a lot of what they want to know. So the teacher has to be more versatile. So it's a different era. I will talk specifically about a purposeful life. When we talk about a purposeful life, there must be a reason for doing something. It must be logical why people do things. In the society that we are living in, we have been promoting consumption with little production, or production being in very small, little hands, in very small numbers. They'll be doing production. And most of the times, they want everybody else to consume. And our youth seem to have been absorbed in this consumption emotion, whereby they want to use an iPhone, but they don't know how it is made. They want to use a Samsung, they don't know how it is made. They want to use a satellite, but they don't know how it is made. They want to eat, but they don't know how the food is grown. They want to be in a comfortable bed, but they don't know how the bed is made. So the issue basically with the education that we are talking about is this consumption society, this consumptive youth who want to be happy, but they don't know who is providing their happiness, should just be turned into an education whereby they know that they are the participants in the production of that happiness, in the production of those goods and services that they so enjoy. We are basically saying we should move away from a society that is being provided to a society that provides. So, governments are responsible for transforming education so that the education begins to have a purpose and to have a benefit. And that the students that are involved in this must know that that's education. They cannot just be consuming things that are made by others. They have to be involved in the production of that happiness. Therefore, my advice to anyone who is growing up is to choose the right kind of education. Are you choosing your education in science, technology, and innovation, which provides goods? Are you getting the education that is looking at attitudes and everything, so that you provide a service to that society? So basically, education is the basis upon which we begin to function as elements of a modern society. And the right kind of education is the one that gives you knowledge, that gives you skills for the purpose of providing either a good or a service, a product or a service to the society in which we live, locally, nationally, internationally, and globally. In terms of education, the main issue is what are the goals that a person has, and what is the goal of education? The goal of education is to produce goods and services for the functioning of a society. So for any educational career path, it is important that a young person chooses what they want to provide to the world, what they want as a service to the world. Education is not only about work, it is about what you enjoy to do when you are doing your work. So, first of all, it is very important as an advice to young people that as they move into life, as they begin to be providers of services in life, any education that they choose must be an education that enables them to provide goods and services for the society. Because I have to say this. First of all, at platform number one is what people need. People need shelter. People need health. People need connection. People need water. People need innovation, yeah? Because nobody wants the same thing all over again. And the education that we do must be the education whose curriculum is answering to those needs. Once your education begins to answer to people's needs, it becomes needed, and you become needed. It becomes purposeful. And that education that derives from what people need is therefore used to provide the means of production, the methods of production, which is the technology, which is the industry. And when we produce that industry, it therefore provides the human needs. So when one is choosing a pathway of education, it must be the one that is enjoyable, that a person is comfortable, that they will be able to provide for the human needs. They will be able to provide the production means, which is the industry that provides for those human needs. And they must enjoy the process. Education is about doing things that you like most, having the competent knowledge, having the competent skills for the purposes of innovation and for the purposes of industrialization and modernization of any society. Education is not a destination. It's a journey. It's continuous. It's a process. And to me, this is a very first most important thing to know. Some people say, I finished my degree. There's nothing like that. You cannot finish a degree. You can stop. You know, when I was doing my thesis, one of my professors said, a thesis is submitted. It's not finished. You can't finish a thesis. You can submit it at some point. So for it to be examined. Nobody can finish education. It therefore means lifelong learning is when you have finished or when you have reached a certain point in life, you have to continue going, because education is to learn how to learn and learn how to learn and learn how to learn. Therefore, lifelong learning becomes very important. What makes me happy about my job is that one of the most important things is that my president, His Excellency Dr. Idim Nangagwa, is supportive of the transformation. So once you are well led, your work is much easier. It means the challenges that you are facing become surmountable. So, but the most important thing is that if you are leading a transformation that is leading to the dignity of a people, locally, nationally, internationally, and globally, you get a fulfillment. You believe you are on a mission to human dignity. Poverty doesn't dignify. So, in order to fight poverty, you fight it with education, which is completely transformed in such a way that we create a global community that is at peace with itself, that is just. But in order to do that, you have to do a transformation in the education, which says humans are equal. Humans can equally contribute. Humans can, when they are given equal opportunity, they can make a better world, where a world is made up of people who are partners, who respect each other, but they can only do that when they are educated enough. So we believe that the education trajectory that we are taking, the transformation that we are taking, which is called Heritage-Based Education 5.0, for modernization and industrialization of Zimbabwe, therefore, for the dignity and respect of the people of Zimbabwe, and therefore, for the dignity and respect of the people of Africa, and therefore, for the dignity and respect of the people of the world, can only be fulfilling because it is the right thing to do. You want to create participants in the world economy. You don't want to create spectators in the world economy. And in doing so, you can only do that through a correct education configuration, a correct education transformation that relies on innovation, that relies on industrialization, that relies on science, that relies on technology for the purposes of making sure that everybody lives in dignity. That gives me satisfaction. But I'm inspired by humanity. I'm inspired by the endurance of humanity, by the hope in humanity, by making sure that humanity lives to its fullest extent, by mutual respect, by co-creating, by creating together, by being multipolar, working together, doing more things. So to me, I'm inspired by a world that is inspired.